Hi, I'm Chuck Carlson and this is Joel Hartman, and we're from the Kino Lakes Mountain Bike Crew, and both Joel and I are part of the volunteer grooming team here in Cuyuna, where we groom about 30 miles of winter trails, single track trails for fat biking. So today we'd like to talk to you about how to set up your tire pressure so that you not only have the best ride experience when you're riding, but also so we maintain the trail and it lasts the longest, and we get that groom of that trail to last as long as possible. So we're going to go through a few things that help you set up your tire pressure, but we also want to talk real quickly about just grooming in general. So when we groom a trail, we generally groom in the afternoon. Yep. And then we will let the trail set up overnight. And so when we groom, we'll have an orange cone that we put right behind us at the entrance of every trail. And we do that to let you know that the trail has been just freshly groomed. And if you see an orange cone or a sign that says to stay off that trail, we would sure ask you to make sure that you honor that and not go around the cone, because that snow needs time to set up overnight. And what that means is that the particles of the snow bind together after they've been groomed. And so that's the first step in getting a good groom on a trail. It's that initial setup. Once that trail has set up overnight, then it's free to use for biking and snowshoeing and things like that. There is a whole another aspect of getting the trail to set up correctly, and that is getting that top layer, or that new layer of snow, to bind to that layer of snow underneath it. So whenever we get a fresh snow, we're grooming it, that layer has to not only set up, but it has to bind to that layer underneath us. And that can take a couple of days, 2, 3, 4 days sometimes. It depends on the weather, the temperature, the humidity in the air, the kind of snow that it was. And so that's another aspect. And this is where tire pressure is so important. If you go on a trail with tire pressure that's too high, you will break apart that snow. It will not bind together anymore. It'll just break apart. And then that destroys the ride quality for everybody else that follows after you. So it's really important that we get proper tire pressure when you're riding on a fat bike. So we're going to show you how to do that. Gauges that you use can really vary. And so instead of telling you the amount of PSI and hoping that your gauge is accurate, what we'd like to do is show you how to tell whether a tire is at the right pressure based on how it feels and how it looks on the sidewall of the tire. So right now we're just going to get a starting point here. So right now, Joel's tire is at 9.4 pounds, and this is a digital gauge. I find that it's pretty accurate. I've compared this to some of the round dial gauges, which I find to be a little bit less consistent. Some of them are right on, some of them can be a little bit off. But this digital gauge is pretty good. And so it's showing that he has 9.4 PSI, which under new trail conditions like this is too high. So if we take a look, if we come in close here, we can see that the sidewall of this tire is not really flexing too much. So what I'm going to do is, with Joel sitting on this, we're going to always start with the back tire. That's important to do because that's where the majority of your weight is when you're on the bike. So we're going to sit on that bike and we're just going to let out air until we see that sidewall start to wrinkle. Like there, when he bounces, you can see that there's a wrinkle in the sidewall. On this side, there's actually a little bit more of a wrinkle, so I maybe went a little bit too far. But let's just see where he's at here for pressure now with that much of a wrinkle. Okay, now this is still saying he's at 5.7 PSI, which is plenty high. Now, a lot of tires really depend on the sidewall suppleness. Some tires you have to run a little bit lower because they don't tend to balloon out as easily. Some tires are a little more supple sidewall and you can get by with just a little bit more air because they have a little more flex. Now, Joel, just take that for a little spin up the trail and just see what you think of that tire pressure. All right, so how does that feel? Does that feel like it's way too low?
Nope, it feels very grippy and it's hugging the trail nice.
So it feels grippy and it's hugging the trail nice. Great. Well, come on back. Let's show everybody how to set the front tire now to kind of match that. To set the front tire is we are going to just basically compare how this feels with how the front feels, because when you're sitting on the bike, you probably won't get a wrinkle on the front tire just because there's a smaller percentage of your weight on that tire. So when I just feel this right now, you can kind of feel that that's a lot stiffer. That's probably up in that 8 to 9 pound pressure again. Yep. So we're going to let out some air. So yeah, we're right at about 5 psi. So on this tire, that seems to be a nice supple, low, low enough pressure that you're going to do just fine. You can see that when I push, the tire easily balloons out there a little bit. All right, so now when we ride that should give us a nice, comfortable ride. It should feel like the bike is always in control. We should have good traction when we're going up hills with lower pressure like this, and it won't destroy the trail, and that's our goal. If you go around a cone, and this is only an inch of snow that we received. If we had 3 or 4 inches of snow, this would be completely destroyed. But you can see already that it breaks up the groom surface. Yeah, so you can see now with low tire pressure how basically it did not sink in at all. It didn't tear anything up. If anything, this is helping to pack that groom down and help it adhere to the layer underneath it, which is really important too. Yeah, and we could even go lower. Now we're kind of setting this up for a trail that's already been kind of packed and pretty firm from the last groom. If we had gotten 4 or 5 or 6 inches of snow and we were trying to get that to pack down, we would ask you to even go lower. So if Joel's at 4.5 psi right now, we'd want him to go down into the 2.5 to 3 in order to not disturb a deeper groom. Okay? In addition to waiting and making sure that the trails are ready to be ridden, riding with low tire pressure will help pack that groom in and make the ride experience for everybody better. The more riders, the better, to a point. And then the other thing that can really happen is if we get some snowshoers out, like the day after a trail's been groomed, if it's not setting up as well as we'd like it to, snowshoers can do wonders for helping to pack that snow in. And so the other thing you can do is, this is a section that was obviously destroyed by a rider. We're going to show how, as a snowshoer, you can actually help the fat bikers by kind of packing in, or we call it stomping. So we're going to just go ahead and go down here, and we're just going to do short little steps and just kind of stay in the middle of the trail. Don't worry about the stuff to the side too much. And by packing that in, that's going to help that trail be rideable. And if it's a bad area, I might go back and a couple of times on it just to help settle it in a little bit. But you can see this snow is a little bit sugary, which is a hard snow to get to set up. This will take a couple of days to be rideable probably here. But so that's how snowshoeing can really help. One thing we like to do is tell riders, if you're coming up fat biking, bring a set of snowshoes with you too, because if you get a day that the snow conditions are not great, for fat bike riding, it's a great time to snowshoe. So it can be a lot of help.